For more analysis on this, we're joined by Wendel Trio, a climate change science and policy analyst. He's also a former director of Climate Action Network Europe. He joins me live from Brussels. Great to have you here with us on TRT World. I mean, over the past few decades, many have been saying that climate change is real and impacting us in more dangerous ways than ever before. And now I think we have the evidence with us. But it's still, when you look at some world leaders, they don't believe in climate change. How do you think it is impacting us right now?
Well, I think this new report, together with many other reports that have been published recently or the last couple of years, are clearly showing that climate change is happening and that it's having severe impacts, especially on those most vulnerable to climate change. It is a pity to see that indeed a number of leaders in the world are not accepting the science, not only on climate change, but on more broad issues. But luckily in Europe, at least, except for a number of, I would say, radical right parties, politicians do agree that climate change is a risk. It is just that people are not necessarily, or decision makers are not necessarily willing to take the right decisions to tackle climate change in the speed and the amount that is really needed.
And Wendell, I understand that as human beings, we have to take both short-term and long-term actions. But given the fact that the situation is worsening at a rapid pace, is there something that we can do immediately to somewhat lessen the impact of climate change on us?
Well, the most important action that we need to take as a society, but of course it is, again, decision makers that need to take the lead in those decisions, is to get or to phase out the use of fossil fuels, because that's the main contributor to climate change, is the burning of fossil fuels. It's quite a challenge because our society has for a very long time depended very strongly on fossil fuels. And so we need to take whatever action is possible to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. And that can be through renewable energy, wind power, solar power, but that can also through the electrification of our transport system, all actions where the first steps are being taken, where a number of steps are proven that they are economically viable, they make sense, but we need to speed up. And of course, there are powers that try to keep us on this fossil fuel addiction, and we need to find ways to help people to overcome those powers and to ensure that they feel good with the alternatives, because the alternatives are available and they're also economically beneficial for people. And that's what we need to be able to convince decision makers, industry, but also ordinary citizens that it is the way forward and that the way forward makes sense. Sometimes we might need to make some changes that seem difficult in the short term, but are proven to be very beneficial in the long term. And that's a bit the challenge, is how can we ensure that people take into consideration both the short and the long term, which is not always easy to do.
Wendell, what happens if we don't take action now?
Well, what happens is that impacts that we're seeing will only increase. There's no way that this is going to reduce, so we will see it increasing. Is the world, I mean, it's sometimes people say, oh, those climate scientists, they speak about doom and gloom and so on. It's not that at a certain moment human life will stop being there, but it is going to be more and more challenging. And in particular, as I said already, for the most vulnerable, it's going to be very challenging. For children, elderly people, for poorer people, they are the ones that are going to be hit hardest, and especially they are going to have the biggest difficulties to overcome the impacts. If you're relatively rich and your car gets thrown away by floods, etc., you can buy a new car. If you're poor and very dependent, it will be much more difficult. The same for housing conditions, etc., etc. So, yeah, it's going to be difficult if we're not taking stronger action than we're doing now, because with current action that is being planned, we are scheduled to double global average temperature rise by the end of the century, which means more than doubling the impacts, because it's going to be what they call exponential. So the impacts will be bigger the higher the temperature increases. So yes, time to take action and especially time to increase action.
Wendel Trio, thanks very much for joining me here on TRT World. Appreciate your taking out the time.
Okay, thank you very much.